I honestly thought I was staring at a ghost. He stood there weighing apples like any regular fellow, but I knew those scars on his hands. I knew that uneven step. Jake Morrison was supposed to be buried with the rest of the Crimson Valley gang after that blood-soaked battle 3 years back. Milfield's market hummed with afternoon life, women sorting vegetables, kids tugging at their mother's skirts, quiet folks doing normal things. But my hands shook while I watched Jake glide from stall to stall, easy as Sunday, like he hadn't helped wipe out half of Silver Creek. I slipped behind a wagon piled with grain sacks, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I'd spent 3 years running from that night, trying to bury what I'd seen and what I'd done. The marshals swore the gang died in that canyon fight. Yet here was Jake Morrison, breathing and calm, buying fruit as if packing for a picnic. My head flew back to Silver Creek, shouts, shots, smoke, the stench of blood. I was the only one who escaped. The only person who saw their faces clear. The only witness who could name them in court. That's why I'd hidden in Milfield under a fake name, working as a store clerk and keeping small. Jake finished at the apple stand and drifted toward Main Street. I followed from the shade, boots quiet on the dust. He still moved with that hunting grace I remembered, eyes sweeping the crowd like a wolf. Old habits. Then he stopped cold in the center of the street. Slowly, on purpose, he turned and looked straight at me. Across 20 yards of dirt, our eyes met, and the same cold smile crept across his worn face. He knew me, too. Icy water rushed through my veins. Jake wasn't only alive. He'd been watching me watch him. This wasn't a chance. This wasn't luck. He started toward me, hand resting easy on his hip, where a gun outline pressed under his coat. People drifted around us, talking about rain and corn prices, while danger walked right through them. I backed into the narrow space between Miller's Hardware and the barber's door. My tongue felt like sand. Jake didn't hurry. He came on steady, sure, like a man who knows his quarry has no way out. That's when I spotted them, 2 more shapes threading the crowd, sliding into place to block my paths. The gang wasn't dead. They were here in my quiet town, and they'd found me. But Jake didn't know I'd seen the others yet. That might be the only scrap of luck I had. I ran. Instinct grabbed the reins, and I sprinted down the alley because my life hung on it. Behind me came Jake's boots pounding the ground, then his shout ripping through market noise. There, the one in the brown vest. The alley emptied into the rear of the general store, where crates and barrels made a tight maze. I vaulted a stack of feed sacks, my clerk's coat snagging on a nail and tearing down the side. 3 soft years had slowed me, and my lungs burned after so little running. I flattened against the back of Murphy's saloon and tried to slow my breath. Through a slice of daylight between buildings, I saw Main Street. One of Jake's men, a lean fellow with a crooked nose I remembered all too well, chatted with Mrs. Henderson by the flower cart, playing friendly while his eyes searched for me. My thoughts raced. The sheriff's office sat 4 blocks away, too far across open road. The station was closer, but the next eastbound wasn't due until evening. I was a rat trapped in a grain bin. Measured steps entered the alley, slow, confident. Jake wasn't rushing now. He knew my choices in a small town were few. I slid behind a row of empty beer barrels. The stale stink of spilled liquor made my stomach twist. Samuel Parker. Jake's voice rolled into the alley, using my real name, not the fake one I wore in Milfield. That's you, isn't it? You always did run. Even that night at Silver Creek, shot out of there like a rabbit. I squeezed my eyes shut. The burning courthouse. Innocent people screaming. The gang had come for a gold shipment. When the townsfolk fought back, the robbery turned to slaughter. I hid in the church cellar and watched through a crack while they killed the judge, the banker, anyone who could point a finger later. We've been hunting you for 3 years, Jake went on, footsteps nearer. Trouble with witnesses is they keep a man awake. Hard to sleep knowing someone out there might talk to the wrong folks. A cat hissed behind me, startled by steps from the other end. Not Jake. Another man. They had me boxed in. I spotted a loose board in the fence. Desperation made me strong, and I yanked it free, opening a gap just wide enough to squeeze through. On the other side lay Widow Morrison's garden. Funny, running through a Morrison plot even if she wasn't kin to Jake. As I crawled, a hand snatched my ankle. Iron fingers crushed my boot, dragging me back. I kicked hard with my free foot and hit something solid. A grunt. Then the grip slipped. I tumbled through the gap and crashed into tomato vines, smashing green fruit. The widow's dog burst into barking from the house, deep and fierce. Neighbors shouting in reply. But I was already running again, cutting through yards, hopping low fences. Boots thundered behind me, more than one pair now, crashing through the same gardens. The truth hit me like a board. This wasn't just about erasing a witness anymore. The whole crew was in Milfield, which meant a big job was coming. They were clearing loose ends first. And I was the loosest end of all. I staggered into the livery, chest heaving like bellows with holes. Old Pete glanced up from shoeing a gelding, worry carving deeper lines into his face. "Samuel, you look like you saw the devil." If only he knew. I grabbed his arm. Too hard. "Pete, I need a horse. Fast. And no questions." He studied me, found something true there, and nodded. "Take the bay in the third stall. She'll run and keep running." He paused, hammer in hand. "Whatever this is, boy, running might not fix it." Before I could answer, we heard it, the sound that emptied my stomach, gunfire. 2 quick cracks near the market. Then a woman screamed. Pete dropped his hammer and hurried to the doors. I followed, afraid of what we'd see. Smoke bled from the direction of Miller's Hardware. People ran, some toward, some away. The chaos I remembered from Silver Creek was waking again. "Lord have mercy," Pete whispered. "What's happening to our town?" I knew exactly what. The Crimson Valley Gang wasn't here just for me. They meant to bleed Milfield dry, bank, stores, maybe even the evening train. And because I'd bolted, they were moving early. Through the crowd, I spotted Jake's uneven gait as he pushed toward the bank. 2 of his men slid to opposite ends of Maine to block any escape. This wasn't wild violence, it was planned. Worst of all, it felt like my fault. If I'd kept my head down, maybe they would have finished and gone. But I'd run, made noise, pushed them to act too soon. Now folks would die because I bought supplies at the wrong time. Pete gripped my shoulder. "Samuel, what do you know?" I looked at the old man who'd been kind to me for 3 full years. I couldn't hide the truth anymore. "Everything," I said low. "I know everything about them. And that's why they'll burn this town." The bank doors blew outward in a storm of splinters and glass. Jake stepped out with a canvas sack in one hand and a smoking pistol in the other. Inside, Mr. Garrett, the bankman, stood smashed against the wall, hands raised high. "Go," I told Pete, but he was already moving, hobbling home quick as his bad knees allowed. He'd lived through 2 raids and a prairie fire. He knew when to fight and when to flee. More shots cracked from the general store. Through smoke, Mrs. Patterson stumbled from her doorway, clutching a bleeding arm. The crooked-nosed thug kicked over a pyramid of canned peaches and stuffed a sack. It was Silver Creek's playbook, step by step. Sow fear, grab what's valuable, kill anyone who remembers. Faces. But this time, I wasn't underground. This time, I could act. I reached up to the rack over Pete's bench and pulled down his old Winchester. It felt heavy and strange. 3 years of clerk work had softened me, but I'd hunted with my father before the war, and some things come back when you need them. The bay mare pawed, jittering in her stall. She felt the violence. I could take her and ride hard to the territorial capital, bring soldiers or marshals. But that would take 2 days. Milfield would be ashes by then. Jake's voice rolled across the street. "Bring out your valuables, jewelry, cash, anything worth taking. Make it easy and nobody else gets hurt." Nobody else. Which meant someone already had. I leaned around the livery door and saw him plain, Jake Morrison, the man I'd watched murder a dozen innocents 3 years ago. He stood dead center in Main Street like he owned it, waving his men into place. The 4th man, a mountain with burned scars on his neck, dragged something heavy from the bank. Not a thing, a man. Mr. Garrett wasn't moving. That's when I chose. Either save Milfield or doom it faster. I stepped out, raised the Winchester, and aimed at Jake's chest. My hand stopped shaking. Maybe meeting your worst fear clears things. Jake, I called across the dust. Remember me? He spun, gun jumping to his hand, but stalled to blink when he saw me standing instead of running. That blink saved me. I pulled the trigger. The rifle kicked like a mule, and Jake twisted as the bullet punched his left shoulder. He didn't drop. Tough as rawhide, he staggered and lost the canvas sack. The street exploded. Jake's men swung their guns my way, but were late. Townsfolk hiding in doorways saw the gang could bleed. Some ran for cover, but others with grit in their guts grabbed weapons. Old Murphy stormed out of his saloon with a shotgun. Tom Miller cracked his broken window with a hunting rifle. Mrs. Henderson even scooped up a brick from her flower cart. But Jake was already charging me, his good arm rock steady, revolver aimed at my face. Blood soaked his shirt, and the same cold rage from Silver Creek burned in his eyes. You should have stayed hidden, boy, he growled. Now it's personal. His bullet hissed past my ear, so close it burned. I dove behind a water trough as splinters leapt from the livery wall where my head had been. The bay mare reared, slamming the stall door. Kill them all. Jake roared over the gunfire. Every last witness. The crooked-nosed killer leveled his rifle at Murphy as the saloon man advanced. The shot smashed into Murphy's chest and flung him backward. He didn't move again. My plan had twisted ugly. Instead of stopping a massacre, I'd guaranteed one. Jake wasn't leaving after a simple robbery anymore. He would torch Milfield and everyone in it. Mrs. Henderson screamed as the scarred giant seized her by the hair and used her as a shield while he edged toward the horses tied behind the mercantile. Tom Miller fired once before a bullet shattered his front glass and forced him back inside. I had to move. The trough wouldn't shield me long, and Jake was circling for a clean shot. I crawled toward the blacksmiths, hugging the ground. Rifle clamped to my chest. Dirt scorched my tongue. Every breath tasted like smoke and iron. The big scarred man barked orders now. Light him up. Leave nothing standing. He shoved Mrs. Henderson aside and yanked a bottle of lamp oil from a saddlebag. The old woman crawled to her ruined flowers, sobbing. Fire blossomed inside the general store as someone kicked a lantern. Dry wood, summer heat. These buildings would burn like tinder. An hour from now, Milfield might be nothing but char and memories. And then I heard it, the steady thunder of hooves from the east. Not one horse, many. A mounted patrol, riding hard. Jake heard it too. His head snapped up, and for the first time today, fear flashed in his eyes. Mount up, he shouted. We ride. The crooked-nosed man ran for his horse, abandoning his station. The scarred brute grabbed whatever loot he could and followed. But Jake paused in the center of Maine, revolver trained on me as I crouched by the anvil. This ain't over, Samuel Parker, he yelled. You cost me Silver Creek, and now you cost me Milfield. There'll be other towns, other chances. Next time, you'll watch everyone you love die before I put a bullet in you. The hoofbeat swelled. Maybe 2 minutes out, maybe less. Jake holstered his gun and turned for his horse, then glanced back once more. See you soon, boy. He swung up, spurred hard, and tore for the western hills. His men thundered after him, fading into dust and smoke like devils slipping home. But I knew this wasn't finished. Men like Jake don't forgive, don't forget. They return. The patrol stormed into Maine just as the last rider crossed the ridge. 12 bluecoats, led by a young lieutenant with a dust-caked face and hard eyes. They'd pushed out of Fort Stevens, chasing the column of smoke seen for miles. Secure the area, he shouted, jumping off his horse before it stopped. Find survivors and knock down those flames. I stepped from behind the forge, Pete's Winchester still in my hands. My legs wobbled, and the weight of it all crashed over me. The lieutenant spotted me. You there, are you hurt? No, sir. I croaked, my voice like gravel. But Murphy's gone, and Mrs. Henderson needs help. There's at least one dead in the bank. 2 soldiers already dragged buckets from the well to fight the fire chewing through the store. Others slipped between buildings, checking the wounded and pushing order into the chaos. They moved sharp and sure, but it was still too late for some. The officer walked over, notebook ready. "Lieutenant Morrison," he said, no kin to Jake by the look of his open, honest face. "Your name? And tell me what happened." "Samuel Parker," I said. The name felt odd after 3 years living as someone else. But hiding time had ended. "I can tell you exactly what happened. And who led it." His eyes hardened. "You saw the attack?" "More than saw," I said, staring at the ridge where dust still drifted. "I'm the reason they came." For the next 20 minutes, I gave it all: Silver Creek, the murders, my years in hiding, and how spotting Jake triggered today's disaster. The lieutenant kept quiet, writing, stopping only to ask sharp questions. When I finished, he shut his book and studied me. "Mr. Parker, reports say the Crimson Valley Gang died 3 years ago. Every man confirmed." "Then your reports were wrong," I said. "Jake Morrison's alive. At least 3 of his men, too. They robbed your bank and killed your people." A soldier called from the bank. Another body inside, more than Mr. Garrett. The lieutenant's jaw set. "Mr. Parker, you'll come with us. The territorial governor will want your statement, and if this is true, we'll need everything you know to hunt them." I nodded, but my mind raced ahead. Telling my story meant the end of Samuel Parker, quiet clerk. It meant trials, newspapers, and a target on my back, not just from Jake, but from anyone who'd help him. Still, as I looked around, Mrs. Henderson crying over her broken flowers, the charred frame of the store, covered bodies carried from a bank, I knew I had no choice. "There's more," I told the lieutenant as his men readied to ride. "This wasn't random. Jake isn't just running. He's planning something bigger. Milfield was meant to be easy money. My running blew his timing. Now he'll be desperate." "Desperate how?" the lieutenant asked, swinging into the saddle. I heard Jake's last promise in my head, saw his eyes. The kind that gets many more innocent people killed. We rode out for Fort Stevens, and I glanced back at the place I'd called home for 3 years. Smoke curled up to a bloody gold sky. Survivors picked through what was left. Jake had slipped away again, but this time he made a mistake. He forced me to stop running. 3 weeks later, I stood inside the territorial courthouse in Denver with my palm on a scuff Bible, swearing to tell the truth about the Crimson Valley Gang. The room was packed, reporters, marshals, and families from Silver Creek and Milfield. Every eye tracked me as I began. "I, Samuel Parker, do solemnly swear." The words felt like stones, each one locking my future in place. No more hiding, no more quiet work behind a counter. Jake and his men were still out there, and what I said today would paint a target on me that might never fade. But when I looked out at those faces, Mrs. Patterson with her arm wrapped tight, Pete, who made the trip despite his aching knees, Mr. Garrett's widow holding a black handkerchief, I knew this was right. They deserved justice. The dead deserved to be named. Judge Harrison, stern and silver-haired, leaned forward. "Mr. Parker, tell the court exactly what you witnessed on the afternoon of September 15th in Milfield." For 2 long hours, I gave them everything. The market and the chase, the gunfire and the dead. I described Jake's scars, his limp, the way he stood and moved. I picked the other men from old wanted sheets the marshals hauled in, names the record claimed belonged to corpses. The defense lawyer, a jumpy fellow who clearly drew the losing assignment, tried to shake me. "Mr. Parker, isn't it true you lived under a false name for 3 years? Why should the court trust a man who lies about who he is?" "Because," I said, staring him down, "lying about a name to stay alive is not the same as lying about murder to shield killers." The courtroom rumbled its approval until the judge's gavel cracked them quiet. When we finished, Marshal Williams met me out on the steps. "Parker, you did right," he said. "But you know what follows." I nodded. "Morrison will come." "Count on it," he said. "That's why the governor signed off on protection. New papers, relocation, federal watch until we catch him." I stared at Denver's busy street, folks shopping, laughing, living. "How many times can a man start over, Marshal?" "As many as it takes to stay breathing," he said. "We've got leads on Morrison. Word says he's eyeing a big score up in Wyoming, railroad peril. If we're correct, we'll close on him within a month." I didn't hold my breath. Men like Jake survive things that should kill them. Like roaches after a fire, they find cracks and crawl out. As I left the courthouse, I felt eyes on me. Reporters? Agents? Or one of Jake's friends? In this new life, I'd never know who to trust. That evening, alone in a sober hotel room, I wrote letters to Milfield, the people I'd learned to care about without meaning to. I thanked Pete for the horse and the rifle. I told Mrs. Henderson I hoped her flowers would bloom again. I wrote the families of the dead, offering thin words that couldn't fill what they lost. I sealed the letters, then set them aside. Mailing them would only put those folks in more danger. Outside, the sun sank over the Colorado Ridge, painting the sky with blood and gold. Somewhere beyond those mountains, Jake was planning his next move, nursing a wounded shoulder and bigger pride. But for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't ducking my past. I faced it head-on, however it ended. The gang everyone thought was dirt and bones wasn't gone at all. Now the whole territory knew it, and I was the one who dragged them back into daylight to answer for what they'd done. Whether I would live to see that day of reckoning, that was a story for another time.